I am the #1 ultimate villain in this novel. The result is that the female lead has already given birth to 2 of my kids. Yet the male lead hasn't even bothered to show up. Every day I sit in my money vault spacing out, so bored that I could literally fall asleep while counting my cash. To be honest, I only have 3 hobbies: loving money, obsessing over beauty, and specifically swooning over gorgeous women. Normally, I'm arrogant and overbearing. If someone rubs me the wrong way, I just buy out their family company, casually driving them into bankruptcy. My life motto is simply, my happiness must be built upon the suffering of others. According to the original script, the male lead will sooner or later return like a king, snatching the female lead's company back from my hands. Then, relying on his protagonist Yahello, he'd make my Thorn family lose our entire fortune, to the point where I couldn't even keep my own pants. Eventually, I'd end up with a crippled leg and blind eyes, wandering the streets and alleys, only to be gang-beaten to the afterlife by over 10 beggars, a demise so tragic it's hard to even imagine. But things are different now. I have awakened, memorizing every single plot spoiler by heart. As long as I don't touch the female lead, the plot simply cannot progress. The male lead wouldn't even have the qualifications to enter the arena, but the problem is, it's just too lonely holding tens of billions in assets, waking up every morning on a 500 square meter, gold-plated bed, the sunlight shining in, champagne popping open automatically, bodyguards lining up to bow. Good morning, Chairman Thorn. Yet my heart felt as empty as a salted fish, scrolling through short videos all day until that fateful day on the news broadcast. A fleeting image flashed on the TV screen. On the screen, Serafina Vance wore a sharply tailored white dress. Her eyes were as cold as blades. Her red lips slightly curved as she stood at the press conference podium, radiating a boss aura that made her look 10 feet tall. I instantly gulped, truly worthy of being the female lead. This beauty, this temperament, absolutely a textbook walking hormone harvesting machine. A bold idea exploded in my brain. Since I already know the whole script, and hold the superpower of a transmigrator, why not take a bite of the female lead one step ahead? Besides, the male lead is probably still abroad eating dry rations right now. Squashing him would be easier than squashing an ant. No sooner said than done. I immediately used the might of the Thorn Corporation to launch a devastating downgrade-level attack on the Vance family's group. I cut off their supply chains, poached all their executives, emptied their market share. This ultimate combo sent the whole city reeling. No matter how talented Serafina was, no matter how capable, she couldn't withstand the crushing wheels of pure capitalism. Not long after, she stood right at the door of my office. Her gaze was fierce, yet she couldn't hide her exhaustion. And just like that, she became my woman. The more we interacted, the more intrigued I got. The more intrigued I got, the more addicted I became. But the weird thing was, the male lead still didn't show up. At first I was afraid of being hit by heaven's righteous justice. Then it turned into excitement, and gradually, I just grew numb to it, with zero fear left. The female lead has popped out 2 babies for me, and there's still no shadow of the male lead anywhere. Where is the guy? Is the system bugged? Early this morning, my hardcore assistant called, his voice so excited it almost cracked. Chairman, we found him! The person you've been looking for has finally appeared. I sprang up from the bed. Spit it out! This morning, the Vance group was hiring bodyguards. There was a man in the crowd standing out like a sore thumb, matching your description perfectly. Oh boy, his name is Kalen Cross. Before turning 18, he was the second young master of the Cross family. After his clan was wiped out, he went abroad as a mercenary for 8 years, and just returned this year. When the photo was sent over, my pupils quaked, sword-like eyebrows, cold sharp eyes, a razor-sharp jawline, radiating an obvious murderous aura, the absolute textbook male lead. Even his name sounded like he had the style of a protagonist in a massive underdog revenge story. I immediately drove to the Vance Corporation building. The moment she saw me, Serafina frowned, looking cold enough to deep-freeze Balthazar Thorn. What are you doing here again? Her voice was chilly enough to turn someone into an ice sculpture. After having 2 kids, her figure had only gotten more alluring. Her white business suit hugged her curves perfectly. Just one look made my Adam's apple bob fiercely. I leisurely pushed up my glasses, the corners of my lips curling into a wicked smile. She was so mad her chest heaved. She quickly grabbed a file folder to cover herself, taking a step back, knocking over the trash can behind her. I planted one hand on her desk and leaned in close. The scent of jasmine, mixed with her fury, hit my face directly. What are you afraid of? I just came to visit the mother of my 2 little rascals. My pen gently lifted her chin, leaving a faint mark on her smooth porcelain skin. Don't tell me I don't even have this right. She bit her lip and glared at me. Keep dreaming. Even though I gave you 2 kids, I will never love you. I let out a low chuckle, my fingers slowly tracing upward along the edge of her stockings. You don't love me? Then let me love you, and we'll call it even. I leaned close to her ear, my voice dropping. Suvance, you wouldn't want the Vance group to go bankrupt tomorrow, would you? Her ears flushed crimson. She turned her face away but stopped struggling. Her mouth was still stubborn, but hearing it honestly just made me want to roll my eyes. Still, I was highly satisfied. The feeling of absolute control was truly top tier. Files and documents scattered all over the floor. The whole building seemed to tremble. It was nearly lunchtime when I finally strolled out of her office at a leisurely pace. The moment I stepped out the door, my bodyguards had already backed the Vance Corporation's security team into a corner. In the crowd, the newly arrived security guard stood out remarkably. Kalen Cross. I shot him a glance, smirking wickedly. You poor little thing, the game has finally begun. But what if he makes a move on me? I pondered for a second, then scoffed. I'm a psychopathic ultimate villain. What do I have to fear? Returning home, I immediately deployed 2 retired special agents to tail him 24/7. Just as I was wondering how to educate the male lead this afternoon, how to deal with him suddenly, a cry rang out from the nursery. When the nanny saw me walk in, her hands trembled. It turned out my 2-year-old eldest daughter was secretly poking her 6-month-old baby brother. The little guy got startled and cried, making the little girl panic too. I sat down, using my thumb to wipe away my daughter's tears. Her wet eyelashes fluttered before she dove straight into my arms, calling out with a soft, milky voice, "Dada." My heart completely melted. I picked her up and coaxed her for a bit. She was quickly grinning from ear to ear. After the nanny soothed the baby brother, the 2 of them lay side by side in the crib, snoring softly, their little faces flushed pink and aggressively adorable. I stood there looking at them, a bit stunned. Is this really the life of a supremely evil villain who stops at nothing? I guess no one ever made a rule saying villains can't be dads. They've lacked a mother's touch since birth. Serafina only visits 3 times a week, and every time she comes I end up bullying her. Over time she started visiting even less. Watching the 2 kids sleep, I suddenly felt a twinge of heartache. I gently tucked them in and turned to leave. Right at that moment, a new message popped up. Kalen Cross had made his move. Last night at a cocktail party, he publicly shielded Serafina from a bunch of rowdy rich kids who were acting up and trying to harass her. Finally, some quality entertainment. Oh, my sweet male lead, you picked up the wrong script. Not only did he save the heiress of the Sterling family, but he also casually rescued Serafina. He even boldly dropped a few cool one-liners on the spot, making the entire venue erupt. Truly a classic male lead. Just debuted, and he's already hugging 2 beauties. You call this a hero saving the damsel? It's clearly the prophecy of a harem opening. Afterwards, he was escorted by a female cop with an impressively imposing figure back to the station for questioning. In the surveillance footage, he rolled his dress shirt sleeves up to his elbows, revealing meticulously sculpted arm muscles, every line perfectly defined. Just one look and you knew he wasn't your average Joe. It all started when some drunk rich brats tried to get handsy with Serafina and Alara Sterling. Kalen Cross didn't utter a single word. With a clean shoulder throw, he neatly slammed and floored the creep trying to feel up Serafina. Now this is getting juicy. I took a sip of red wine, my fingers lightly tapping the crystal glass. As I watched the scene on the monitor, Serafina tried to stay composed, but that cold facade mixed with a hint of panic made her even more heart-flutteringly attractive. Today she was wearing a champagne-colored fishtail dress. The crystal necklace on her chest trembled slightly with her rapid breathing, as if speaking unspoken words. Kalen Cross stood like a human shield in front of her, exuding an intense aura, completely ignoring the threats from the rich punks. He even deliberately struck a heroic pose, probably thinking this would win the beauty's heart. Makes sense. Being a mercenary abroad for 8 years, he's probably never seen so many beautiful women in his entire life. Chairman, do you need me to? My assistant made a throat-slitting gesture, basically asking if I wanted Kalen Cross taken care of. I raised a hand to stop him, swirling the wine glass between my fingers. A red glint flashed in my eyes. No rush. I want to see how the male lead reacts first. If he finds out this beautiful iceberg is already a mother of 2, I wonder how grotesquely his face will contort. Thinking of this, I burst out laughing. I unlocked my tablet and pulled up the file on the Sterling family's heiress. Being a villain like me, how could I let the male lead enjoy the good stuff so easily? Just as I put the tablet away, I glanced at the night vision baby monitor. My daughter was very seriously trying to shove her little brother's foot into her mouth. Seeing her adorable, focused face, my heart melted and my mood unexpectedly softened. Serafina came home very late today. The clicking of her high heels on the marble floor was crisp but exhausted, just like the woman herself. The kids are asleep? Her voice was flat, devoid of emotion. I nodded, watching her walk into the nursery. These 2 toddlers were the result of my forceful ways back then. Perhaps in her eyes they were an indelible stain, so every time she visited, her face was full of distance and frost. I stepped up behind her, threading my fingers through her long hair. Flowing down, the moment I touched the nape of her neck, her whole body stiffened. I let out a soft chuckle, leaning in close to her ear. "Coming home so late. Shouldn't you be punished a little?" Seraphita turned her head, a flash of panic in her eyes. "Not here. What if the kids wake up?" I grabbed her chin, my thumb brushing gently against her red lipsticked lips. "And what if I insist?" She turned her face away, but I immediately pinned her wrists against the wall. "Balthazar Thorn, are you crazy?" she hissed, lowering her voice. Terrified of waking the babies next door, I ripped off my tie and lightly bit her trembling earlobe. My voice was husky. "I can be even crazier." What followed was just standard operating procedure. She forced herself to endure as I half dragged, half carried her into the bedroom. Morning broke. In a rare occurrence, I actually felt a bit tired. Reaching for the phone on the nightstand, 3 unread messages popped up. My assistant sent the latest surveillance update. After giving his statement, Kalen Cross went straight to an old martial arts dojo in the suburbs. The owner was a former Special Forces soldier who used to be a bodyguard for the Cross family. Interesting. I walked barefoot on the soft wool carpet. Walking over to the nursery door, my daughter was crawling by the crib, using her tiny warm hand to poke her little brother's face. Spotting me, she immediately opened her arms and lunged. I scooped her up with one arm and gently stroked my sleeping son's face with the other hand. He still had milk stains on the corner of his mouth, looking both silly and sweet. Thank goodness my 2 little munchkins weren't going hungry, but the plot was starting to veer wildly off the script I prepared. According to the initial intel, Seraphina and Kalen Cross went together to a suburban villa. I had originally planned to show up right on cue, expose the female lead's secret in front of the male lead, and then use their ensuing conflict to completely obliterate this son of destiny. The result? I brought 800 men in black, kicking down the door with the momentum of slaying demons and eradicating devils, only to find Kalen Cross and that bodyguard guy in the room, looking utterly bewildered. Meanwhile, Seraphina was tied to a chair, her mouth duct-taped. In Kalen's hand was a pen, and on the table lay a share transfer agreement. But what truly stunned me was the desperately joyful, glowing look in Seraphina's eyes when she saw me. She mumbled incoherently, "Balthazar." Kalen Cross's Adam's apple bobbed, his voice tense. "How did you find this place?" I leisurely peeled off my gloves. Behind me, my 800 men immediately formed an airtight perimeter around the entire villa. A quick-witted lackey pulled a sofa over. I sat down, crossed my legs, and let my gaze fall on Seraphina. Her eyes were shockingly bright. "Second young Master Cross," I chuckled dryly. "What kind of little play are you two putting on here?" Kalen's face changed instantly. He thrust his hand forward, pressing a blade against Seraphina's neck, drawing a thin line of blood. "Tell your men to back off, or I'll end her." I looked at the streak of blood and suddenly burst into laughter. I pulled out a cigarette case. The click of the lighter echoed crisply in the dead silent room. "Do it!" I blew out a smoke ring. "You think I won't?" His hand trembled slightly and the blade dragged another inch. The pearl necklace around Seraphina's neck snapped, pearls scattering across the floor like shattered moonlight. In that moment, I found it utterly hilarious. I thought they had run off for a secret rendezvous. Who would have guessed the male lead was actually kidnapping the female lead? The sniper's laser dot had been locked onto his forehead for a while now. All I needed was a snap of my fingers, and a second later, he'd go down to meet the Grim Reaper. But in the end, I agreed to his terms. After all, Seraphina is the mother of my kids. I gave him 100 million in cash, and a chopper for his getaway. Yet this clown actually wanted to take Seraphina with him, and that right there was when he gleefully stomped all over my absolute bottom line. Did he seriously think that cosplaying as a mercenary abroad for a few years meant he could act tough on my turf? My bodyguards. Every single one of them came back from anti-terrorism battlefields. In the blink of an eye, the hostage was safely rescued. Kalen Cross and his bodyguard buddy were beaten to a pulp, looking like Swiss cheese. Seraphina went limp in my arms, clutching my shirt in a death grip, refusing to let go. The woman who was usually so cold and arrogant was now sobbing like a lost child. "I knew you would come save me." Her voice was shaking. She looked up, her long eyelashes clumped with tears and smudged mascara. You knew Kalen Cross had issues from the start, didn't you?" I looked into those teary eyes. For a split second, I didn't know how to respond. Was I supposed to flat out say, "I came here to exterminate the male and female leads because I thought you two were having an affair"? My 800 guards were cleaning up the scene. Someone had already tossed a dust cover over Kalen Cross's body. "Let's go home first," I feigned indifference, casually taking a roll of bandages from a guard to go through the motions, wrapping it around Seraphina a few times. Who would have thought she'd suddenly grab my tie and violently pull me down? Her lips pressed fiercely against mine, carrying a metallic taste of blood. This move was too unexpected. Out of pure reflex, I wrapped my arms around her waist, only to feel a freezing dampness. Her back was completely drenched in cold sweat. My grip tightened, hugging her firmly into my chest. Pressed against me, she trembled slightly. My 800 bodyguards simultaneously turned their backs, forming a literal wall of meat to give us privacy. But in my mind, one question was looping endlessly. Aren't male leads supposed to be the shining beacons of justice and honor? Aside from being a bit of a playboy like me, why the hell did he resort to kidnapping the female lead for extortion and threats? It made even a professional villain like me feel secondhand embarrassment for him. At worst, I just abuse my power to bully people. I've never pulled such dirty low-rent stunts. On the way back to the city, Serafina finally spilled everything about when she was captured. Kalen Cross forced her to hand over all the Vance Group shares. It turned out that 9 years ago, the Cross family's downfall was orchestrated by the Vances, who drove them into a dead end. He came back purely to take back what was his. Old man Vance never mentioned this on his deathbed, so she had absolutely no idea. After talking for a while, Serafina leaned against me, her head resting gently on my shoulder. In my mind, a click went off. So Kalen Cross was just a revenge-driven character, not the male lead at all. A wild realization popped into my brain. He was 80% likely just a tool character born to create opportunities to level up the romance between the actual leads. This subplot was clearly an instance dungeon for the real male lead, to grind XP, show off his skills, and beat a boss for brownie points. The problem is, who on earth is the real male lead? Why hasn't he shown up yet? At 3 a.m., my assistant sent a report confirming the purge of the remaining Cross family factions. I stared at the screen. Serafina hugged me from behind, burying her face in the crook of my neck, her warm breath tickling my skin. What was even more ridiculous was, she had brought the 2 toddlers over to our room to co-sleep. In that moment, I spaced out a little. It felt like we were actually a real family of 4. The death of Kalen Cross quickly climbed the trending searches. Second young master of Cross family dies in tragic accident, suspected gang violence. I sat in my office, my fingers unconsciously tapping on the mahogany desk. Lately, Serafina had become exceptionally clingy, coming home early every single day right after work to be with the kids. This bizarre change left me feeling a bit unaccustomed. Logically, the real male lead hasn't even entered the stage yet. As a villain, I shouldn't be having any soft feelings. But strangely enough, I found myself falling deeper and deeper for her. Until that rainy night, I was standing close to the floor-to-ceiling window, holding my freshly coaxed baby boy. To sleep, the city lights shining like a galaxy before my eyes. Serafina pushed the door open and walked in, raindrops still clinging to her hair. In her hand was a gold-stamped invitation, a charity gala hosted by the Sterling family. She tossed the card onto the coffee table, her manicured nails scratching the black velvet surface, leaving a faint trail. "Did you bump into Alara Sterling today?" I asked casually. Her towel-drying motion paused mid-air, revealing a flushed earlobe. "This afternoon. Ran into her at the spa," Serafina replied, in a flat tone. I patted my son's bum and lowered my voice, teasingly repeating the name. "Alara Sterling." She instantly glared at me, with a look that wanted to prematurely send my soul to the afterlife on the spot. That evening, I escorted her to the gala, and the moment I walked through the door, I saw an utterly absurd scene. Lord Sterling, a man supposedly bedridden with a terminal illness, was actually standing on stage giving a passionate speech. I frowned and glanced at my assistant. He quickly leaned into my ear. "Word is, some young guy saved old man Sterling. His medical skills are supposedly freakishly magical. Why am I only hearing this now?" I cursed under my breath. The assistant immediately bowed his head in apology. I stared at the rosy-cheeked Lord Sterling on stage, swirling the champagne in my hand. Right at that moment, a man was escorted by Alara Sterling onto the stage. His posture was ramrod straight, his side profile chiseled like a knife, and his lips held an impossibly confident smirk. Every step he took reeked of that destined protagonist aura. And next, "Please allow me to introduce my savior," Lord Sterling's voice boomed. That day, I snuck out of the hospital to get some fresh air and nearly collapsed in the street. Thankfully, this divine doctor was passing by and snatched me right back from the gates of hell. The entire hall's gaze shifted to the young man. His suit looked a bit dated, yet he emanated an ancient vibe, like he was out of his era. He gave a slight nod. "Disciple of the Mystic Pinnacle sect of Azure Mountain. My name is Zephyr Blackwood." I nearly dropped my champagne. Holy crap, just hearing this name screams main character aura. 10,000 times louder than Kalen Cross. Could this be the real male lead? Seeing the color drain from my face, Serafina covertly pinched me. "What's wrong with you?" "No, Nothing, I pretended to be chill, but my eyes were glued to Zephyr Blackwood. He smiled as he accepted the gratitude. His gaze swept the hall, pausing for a few seconds on Seraphina, before locking dead onto me. The party officially began. Zephyr Blackwood crossed his arms and walked through the crowd, with the swagger of a king descending to earth. Suddenly, a wealthy socialite ran up to him. "Divine Doctor, my grandpa is also in critical condition. Do you happen to have any free time?" Zephyr glanced at her, the corner of his mouth twitching upwards. "A healer's heart is merciful. I can examine him any time." I knew my cue had arrived. Curling my lips into a smile, I stepped forward with my wine glass. "Divine Doctor, I've admired you for so long. May I ask, do you have a medical license?" He chuckled softly, pulling a yellowed, ancient-looking booklet from his pocket. "The 36th generation disciple of the Mystic Pinnacle sect. Is that not enough?" I tilted my chin up and turned to the socialite. "Use your little brain and think for a second. You believe he's a divine doctor just because he spouted a few lines? What if he treats someone to death? Who's going to take responsibility?" I swept my gaze around the room, flashing my textbook villain smile. "Everyone, tell me, am I making sense or what?" The atmosphere instantly froze. Zephyr Blackwood's face darkened, his eyes glaring as if soaked in poison. "Mr. Thorne, are you doubting the legacy of the Mystic Pinnacle sect?" No, I wagged a finger. "I just believe in the national regulatory system. If you're so amazing, go take the exam and get a license. How hard can it be?" To my surprise, he laughed out loud, a laugh filled with the wild freedom of the mountains. "Mr. Thorne makes a valid point." He cupped his hands together with utmost sincerity. "Tomorrow I shall register for the exam." This reaction completely floored me. According to standard tropes, he was supposed to pull off some earth-shattering medical miracle and make me eat dirt, right in front of the whole venue. But right at that moment, an old man suddenly collapsed. Just seconds ago he looked perfectly healthy, but now his face was ghostly pale, thick black blood gushing from his nose and mouth. The hall immediately exploded into chaos. Guests screamed bloody murder and scattered like roaches. Zephyr Blackwood's lips curled up, shooting me a highly smug look. He rolled up his sleeves and stepped forward. With a flick of his wrist, a row of silver needles fanned out, sparkling under the chandelier. "Step aside." He placed his fingers on the old man's pulse, but just a second later his pupils violently contracted. He instantly deployed his acupuncture technique. The silver needles moved so fast they were practically afterimages. No one could even see his hand movements clearly. But just as he was about to retract his hands, bang! The hall doors were kicked open. "We got a report of illegal medical practice happening here." The police stormed in, throwing the scene into a second layer of absolute pandemonium. Paramedics rushed in, hauling the old man onto a stretcher. 3 cops surrounded Zephyr Blackwood. His face was darker than the bottom of a burnt pot. He was just about to explain that he was saving a life, when he was utterly crushed by one sentence: "Please present your medical license." He choked on his own words. Alara Sterling jumped up anxiously, but was immediately grabbed by her grandpa, Lord Sterling, to shut her mouth. "Do you want us to lose even more face?" I had my arm around Seraphina's waist, standing at the edge of the crowd, leisurely watching the show. Right then, the old man on the stretcher suddenly let out a gurgling hack sound. Black blood blistered up from the acupuncture holes and began to ooze out. Zephyr Blackwood's face morphed drastically. He lunged forward and ripped all the silver needles out. "What's happening?" Alara pushed her way forward to ask. "Shut up!" Zephyr gritted his teeth, veins popping on his forehead. He snapped his head around and glared at me. "Did you tamper with this?" Every single pair of eyes in the hall instantly laser-focused on me. I casually adjusted my cuffs. "The divine doctor treats someone to death, and you want to pin the blame on me?" Before I even finished my sentence, the old man on the stretcher convulsed violently. From the puncture holes, a foul-smelling liquid mixed with black blood geysered out. Zephyr Blackwood yanked a small porcelain bottle from his jacket, shook out a bright red pill, and forcefully jammed it into the old man's mouth. "Stop it!" the nurse screamed. Just 3 seconds later, spiderweb-like blood vessels flared up under the old man's skin. With a sickening pop, his eyeballs practically burst as black blood spewed out violently. "He's dead! Someone's dead!" a female guest shrieked before passing out cold on the spot. Zephyr Blackwood was pinned down by the cops and dragged away. He turned his head, staring at me with the venomous eyes of a viper, making the hairs on the back of my neck stand up. "It was you, wasn't it?" Seraphina whispered in my ear. I didn't reply, just gave her waist a gentle squeeze. I thought this was going to be the badass origin story of a divine doctor. Reincarnated. Who knew he'd fatally faceplant on the very first hurdle? Thanks to my elite team of lawyers pushing the case, the charge of illegal medical practice resulting in death was fast-tracked straight to the emergency execution list. Urgently, the TV broadcast the news. Quack doctor sentenced for fatal malpractice. Sentenced today. Suspect Zephyr Blackwood executed. The footage cut to the courthouse. Zephyr was escorted out, his face covered in spit and curses from the victim's family. My assistant texted the target. Confirmed deceased. I opened a bottle of wine, sitting in deep thought. Who the heck is the real male lead? Before I could even finish pondering, news from the Whitmore family arrived. Draken Vale, the live-in son-in-law of the Whitmore family, attended Patriarch Whitmore's 70th birthday banquet today. The other sons-in-law gifted mountains of luxury items, piled as high as a mountain, earning endless applause from the guests. Draken Vale, however, not only showed up late, but didn't even bring a gift. He insisted on doing calligraphy on the spot as his present. He flourished a brush and wrote 4 words: "Heaven rewards the diligent." The guests burst into mocking laughter, calling him a cheap, pretentious hillbilly. Patriarch Whitmore was so furious he almost had a stroke, nearly turning the birthday bash into a funeral. The Whitmore relatives furiously cursed him out as a useless piece of trash. And what did he do? He just silently grabbed a broom and swept up the scrap paper on the floor. A few annoyed VIP guests stepped up to teach him a lesson, only to be slapped into next week by Draken Vale. No one could withstand even a single move from him. Patriarch Whitmore's hands shook with rage as he roared, "You trash! You dare offend the Thorn Group! Are you tired of living?" Matriarch Whitmore quickly supported him and yelled, "Draken Vale, get on your knees and apologize to our esteemed guests. To me, the Thorn family is nothing but small fry, a banquet for this 3-cent family. I wouldn't have even bothered to show up." Yet Draken Vale stood amidst the Whitmore family, his lips curling in utter disdain. A measly Thorn family? I could wipe them out with a flick of my finger. The moment those words dropped, all the color drained from the Whitmore family's faces. A mere live-in son-in-law dared to speak like that. The elders rushed forward, slapping him across the face a good dozen times. My Thorn family representative's face instantly darkened. He signaled the bodyguards to prepare for a takedown, but before they could act, Draken Vale suddenly let out a cold laugh. His lips curved like a blade, and in the blink of an eye, all his brothers-in-law were flipped onto the ground. "Chaos! He's hitting people!" Matriarch Whitmore shrieked, just as the Thorn rep was about to order a takedown. Over 10 burly men in black suddenly shot up, built like brick outhouses, radiating an overwhelming aura. They all wore matching black trench coats like they just walked out of a movie set. The entire hall plunged into dead silence. Before the Thorn men could even speak, Draken Vale frowned and barked out, "Who told you to come? Scram!" I narrowed my eyes. This was exactly the legendary type of male lead in the rumors, utterly vicious and arrogant to outsiders, yet submissively bowing his head to his abusive in-laws. Doesn't know how to dodge suffering, doesn't know how to enjoy peace, acts tough with his loyal subordinates, but plays the submissive victim in front of terrible people. Ronan Pierce dropped to one knee, cupping his hands in desperate plea. "Warlord, the border is in turmoil. The Asura army needs you to return." But Draken Vale just waved his hand wearily. "I've already told you. Since the day I left the Asura army, I no longer wish to involve myself in the underworld. I just want to be an ordinary live-in son-in-law." He turned to the stunned guests. "Do not be afraid. They came to invite me back, but I am tired of the bloodshed. I will not return. Please give this Asura warlord some face. When you leave here, keep my true identity a secret." Mother effer, if you hadn't brought it up, who would have even known you were a warlord? Seeing the stubborn, dumbfounded expressions on everyone's faces, Draken Vale was clearly very satisfied with his theatrical performance. He waved his hand, dismissing Ronan Pierce and his men, and went back to playing the role of the long-suffering loser. The peanut gallery of guests finally couldn't hold it in anymore. "Ha ha ha, I'm dying. This banquet is worth every penny." Someone clutched their stomach, leaning against the wall, gasping for air from laughing so hard. Draken Vale looked bewildered. He clearly didn't understand why absolutely no one was following his script. Oh my God, who knew the spineless son-in-law of the Whitmores could pull off such a massive stunt? He even hired extras to act out a tragic drama. Asura warlord? My sides are splitting. Why doesn't he just say he's the reincarnation of Emperor Qin? Exactly, believing he's a warlord is like believing I'm a resurrected royal guard, a piece of trash daring to impersonate a warlord. Isn't he afraid the real warlord will show up at midnight with a machete to chop him up? Laughter exploded throughout the hall, louder and more chaotic than a New Year's festival. Meanwhile, Draken Vale maintained his cold, arrogant facade, standing with his hands clasped behind his back, in the middle of the crowd as if he truly were a peerless martial arts master. His wife, Isolde Frost, was so enraged her face turned green. She raised her hand and delivered a resounding slap to his face. It's one thing that you're normally a coward, I tolerate that. But you dare to blaspheme my idol? You even dare to bullshit about the title of the Asura warlord? Her chest heaved with anger, highlighting curves that could make a saint sweat. And exactly at this moment, I walked through the door. I leisurely took off my sunglasses. My gaze swept over her for 1 second, then 2. An absolute stunning beauty, definitely carrying the standard issue female lead hardware. Thank God I wasn't late. The main feature was just kicking off. As soon as they saw me, the crowd automatically parted like the Red Sea, everyone pasting on fawning, sycophantic smiles. "Don't stop, keep the show going," I said mildly. I heard someone here was bragging that with a single finger, he could wipe out my Thorn family. I'm awfully curious. I wanted to see what the live-action version of a Tamagotchi pet looks like in person. The whole room instantly fell dead silent. You could even hear people breathing. Drakenvale still stood there with his head slightly bowed, putting on an air that sought to intimidate the very heavens. He spoke in a golden, resonant voice. "I am the one who said it. I won't change my name or alter my surname. I am the Asura warlord, Drakenvale, and these men are my subordinates." After saying that, he deliberately whipped his trench coat back, striking a pose in an attempt to recreate the classic legendary smirk. But the very next second, the men in black all dropped to their knees in unison, shouting loudly, "We humbly welcome the warlord's return." This performance nearly made me think I'd walked onto the wrong movie set. So Drakenvale was the real male lead all along. That means the 3 years I spent putting effort into tricking Seraphina went straight down the drain? No wonder the plot's progression kept getting clogged up. The female lead was never Seraphina. It was Isolde Frost! The corner of my lips quirked up as I looked at Drakenvale. All right, Lord Warlord. If you're going to be this much of an eyesore, I won't bother playing along either. But the Thorn family isn't some soft persimmon for anyone to just squash. I turned to the men in black. I'm asking you extras. How much is he paying you? I'll pay 10 times that. Take the money and get out of here immediately. Wrap up the gig and go home. One of the men in black suddenly shot up, eyes bloodshot. Bold! You dare insult the warlord? Get on your knees and kowtow an apology. Or don't even think about leaving here alive today. I raised one finger and said coldly, 100K each. Stop acting. Take the cash and bounce. I'll pretend this circus never happened today. The guy glared and roared. You dare humiliate us? We are men of honor and loyalty. Money cannot buy us. 200K. I leaned back against the sofa, crossing my legs, my tone totally relaxed. If you don't leave, I'll break your legs. The guy in black softened his tone slightly. We told you, it's about brotherly honor. Seeing this, Drakenvale smiled smugly. He clearly thought his subordinates were earning him major street cred. I lost my patience and gave a slight wave of my hand. Dozens of my bodyguards instantly closed in from all 4 sides. Drakenvale's reaction was pretty fast too. The men in black immediately shoved him behind them, forming a protective circle. He tilted his head back, his face filled with supreme arrogance. Balthazar Thorn, you think having some chump change makes you special? These are my brothers who have gone through life and death with me. His lips twitched, getting ready to pull that stupid trademark smirk again. He dares? Rip his mouth open. But right as I gave the order, unexpectedly, another wave of men in black flooded in, tightly surrounding Drakenvale, blocking my guards on the outside. He successfully managed to finish his smirking pose. Wow, male leads really do have mystical backup buffs. But I wasn't worried. When calling for backup, I always prefer overkill. The very next second, from the far ends of the corridors and private rooms, countless more of my elite guards poured out, every single one of them holding a submachine gun, the muzzles uniformly pointed dead center. The guests screamed and fled in terror, the scene so chaotic it nearly spun out of control. I stared straight at Drakenvale, my smile turning ice cold. Tell me, do you think your temporary actors punch faster? Or do my guards' bullets fly faster? Drakenvale's face went sheet white, his Adam's apple bobbing hard. His panicked eyes darted around the sea of pitch-black gun barrels. Balthazar Thorn, you're insane, using hot weapons on domestic soil. You're asking for a death sentence. I ignored him. Leisurely pulling out a cigar, my assistant instantly sparked a lighter. I took a deep drag and blew out a flawless smoke ring, my villainous aura peaking. Kneel down right now, and I might consider sparing your life. Insolence! How could the almighty Asura warlord ever? The man in black hadn't even finished his battle cry when 2 suppressed thwips echoed out, blood exploding from his kneecaps like geysers, crashing hard to his knees on the floor instantly. I told you I'd break your legs. A man of my word. I leaned down and sneered at Drakenvale. Wanna bet? The next shot is going to blow your family jewels to kingdom come. Drakenvale's face instantly lost all color. His legs clamped tightly together on pure survival instinct. The mob behind him uniformly took a half step back, a few of them even starting to shiver violently. Balthazar Thorn, he ground out furiously. Do you even know what you're doing? I flicked the ash off my cigar, my smile growing colder. Of course I do. I'm getting angry on behalf of the real Asura warlord who happens to be a buddy of mine. If you clowns dare to use his legendary name to run a scam, then don't blame me for abandoning reason. After saying that, I raised my hand and mimed shooting a gun. Draken Vale's whole body violently flinched. He grabbed his crotch and collapsed onto the floor. A pale yellow stain slowly spread across his pants. Ha ha ha. With psychological fortitude this weak, he actually dared to call himself a warlord. The entire hall erupted into roaring laughter. Some people were slapping the tables. Others were doubled over in hysterics. Isolde Frost was so humiliated and furious, her face turned a sickly green. It felt like the entire world was collectively mocking her horrible taste in men. I stepped up to Draken Vale, used the toe of my shoe to nudge his chin up. Now tell me, who is wiping out who with a flick of a finger? His pupils quivered erratically, his lips trembling, but he couldn't force out a single word. A grown man and you still wet your pants. The laughter grew even louder. The men in black bowed their heads in deep shame, some even squeezing their eyes shut. Call this a warlord? This was basically a clinical case of battlefield paralysis. Draken Vale's eyes were brimming with pure murderous intent. Being held at gunpoint and still managing to hold it in. His mind was truly venomous. Letting him live too long would become a massive disaster, but making a permanent move on him in front of all these people would bring unpredictable consequences. After a moment's thought, I raised my hand. Bam! A fiery punch straight to his face. Then I glanced at my assistant. Instantly, all of Draken's men in black were dragged away by my guards until they were out of sight. I brushed off my hands, looking down at Draken Vale sprawled out on the floor. Next time, don't play these kinds of jokes. I've already dismissed all those actors for you. No need to thank me. All right. Today is the Patriarch's 70th birthday banquet. Hurry up and sit down. The food is about to get as cold as an ex's heart. Right. Let's all sit down. Don't let the dishes feel left out. Patriarch Whitmore grinned from ear to ear, personally pulling me over to the guest of honor's seat. If I didn't know today was his birthday, I would have thought this whole banquet was thrown to celebrate me. Draken Vale was led away by the servants to wash up, change into clean clothes before coming back. The moment he sat down, he frantically said to Isolde Frost, "Wifey, you have to believe me. I really am the Asura warlord, you can't." Before he could finish, smack! He ate another slap. A few guests nearby sneered and scooted their chairs far away from Draken Vale. Haven't you embarrassed us enough today? If Mr. Thorn wasn't so magnanimous, the grass on your grave would already be 10 feet high. Draken Vale held his cheek, his eyes red-rimmed as he looked at Isolde Frost. Wifey, I'm not lying to you. Shut your mouth! Isolde backhanded him with yet another slap. You still dare to bring it up? I must have had water on the brain to marry you. It's one thing to be totally useless, but now you've learned how to make up pathological lies? The more she spoke, the angrier she got. She swung her hand again. Whack! Draken Vale used both hands to shield his face, but his eyes, dark and brooding, stared dead straight at me. The corners of his mouth stretched into a chilling smirk. What the hell are you looking at? Isolde got even madder and delivered a rapid-fire combo of 3 more slaps. You still dare to act tough? Balthazar Thorn hasn't kicked you out yet, has he? Draken Vale lowered his voice, exuding a sickly, unhinged ferocity. Don't worry, wifey, my identity has been exposed, but Balthazar Thorn has no idea what price he'll pay for offending the Asura. Warlord, once I end him, the entire Thorn Corporation will be yours. By then, you will be the absolute #1 female tycoon in the Dragon Kingdom. Who would ever dare look down on you again? Isolde Frost was shaking with sheer rage, her manicured nails digging deep into her palms. She suddenly grabbed a bottle of red wine off the table and smashed it violently right at his feet. Get out! Get out of my sight right this instant! Draken Vale's expression shifted continuously. Finally, he gritted his teeth, turned around, and walked away. As he passed by me, he mouthed slightly, "Hold on to your miserable dog life for as long as you can. It's a real shame that when he left that time, he'd never return." The next time Isolde Frost saw him, Draken Vale's name was already carved onto a tombstone. The absolute second he stepped out of the Whitmore Estate's gates, over 200 snipers locked onto him simultaneously. More than 100 heavily armed gunmen surrounded him like an iron barrel. He had absolutely zero chance to fight back. He was escorted straight down into the specialized underground dungeon of the Thorn family. Being a villain like me, I obviously couldn't let him die too quickly or too comfortably. For 49 days straight, I didn't say a single word to him. My subordinates thought I was playing some advanced psychological torture game. Every day they went in to interrogate him. Talk! I won't talk! Talk! I won't talk! It went on like this until he finally heard the news. The entire Asura army abroad had been completely annihilated. His whole body nearly spontaneously combusted on the spot. Deep down, I'm actually a nice guy. I didn't want the male lead's ending to be too miserable, so I told my men to send him off peacefully, afraid that he might pull a fake death resurrection trick. I specifically had him divided into several portions and cremated them separately, ensuring he was thoroughly and permanently deleted from the server. I finally breathed a huge sigh of relief and slept incredibly well that night. But the main issue remained. What was I supposed to do about Serafina? Lately, she had been clinging to me in the weirdest ways. Without even waiting for her shift to end, she'd sneak home early to cook dinner. While eating, she'd occasionally look up at me and smile goofily, her eyes sparkling like she had a built-in beauty filter on. Once the kids were out of the room, she'd stand up, wearing her incredibly distracting business attire, and march straight toward me. With one hand, she'd grab my tie, leaning in close, like a clingy little kitten begging for attention, rubbing her face against mine. This isn't right. This is extremely not right. Her current state was exactly like a teenage girl struck by first love, making me completely forget where to put my hands. Could this be what they call being love-brained? What was even more outrageous was, when I was reviewing documents, thump, she slammed a glass of hot milk onto my desk. The heavy thud of glass against wood made me frown and look up, catching her furiously blushing ears just in time. "Drink it all," she ordered in a fierce tone, yet her fingers nervously twisting the hem of her shirt were visibly trembling. I put my pen down and deliberately put on a stern face. "Since when does CEO Vance have the authority to give me orders? So what if I do?" She lifted her chin defiantly. "If you dare to bully me, I'll go discipline those two precious babies of yours." I instantly grabbed her wrist and pulled her right into my lap. The pen streaked a huge smear of ink across the document. "Got a lot of nerve, huh?" I bit down lightly on the rim of her ear, clearly feeling her tremble. "I dare you to try touching one hair on them." She suddenly looked up, her red lips brushing softly against my jawline. She whispered, "Balthazar Thorne, let's get married." I stared at her glossy lips for 3 seconds, then laughed. "CEO Vance, are you really in love with me now? Whether you snatch me up or not is up to you." She shot up. Her pencil skirt rubbed against the leather chair with a squeak. She spun around to leave, nearly twisting her ankle in her high heels. I reached out to catch her, but she swatted my hand away. "Halt," I said coldly. Slowly standing up, she turned her head, trying to fake a cold glare, raising her eyebrows. I sighed, slowly adjusting the tie she had yanked askew deliberately, avoiding her gaze that was practically overflowing with anticipation. "Pick a date, we'll go get registered." Her eyes instantly lit up as if filled with a million stars, but she still tried to suppress a smile, putting on a haughty air. Who even wants to?" Before she could finish her sentence, she launched herself right at me. The force was so strong, it sent my back crashing into the bookshelf with a loud thud. She stood on her tiptoes and bit down right on my collarbone. Her pearl earrings scraped painfully against my jaw. "Are you a puppy?" I grabbed her waist and tossed her straight onto the sofa. Even after being tossed down, she refused to behave. She kicked up her leg, her stiletto heel, jabbing right into my knee, making me suck in a sharp breath. "Serves you right." She ripped open 2 buttons on my dress shirt. "Who told you to be so mean to me in the car last time?" I pinned both of her wrists, above her head. My other hand reached down to pull the side zipper of her tight skirt. "Balthazar Thorne!" she panicked. "The kids are right next door!" My movements paused. I curled my lips into a lazy, wicked smile. "You're the one who seduced me first." During our little struggle, she accidentally knocked over the glass of milk. The creamy white liquid dripped down the edge of the desk, landing right onto her snow-white instep. "It's dirty now," she mumbled in a tiny voice. Right at that exact moment, our son's cry rang out from the nursery next door. Serafina jumped up like a startled rabbit, frantically straightening her clothes. "What's the rush?" I leisurely helped her button her blouse back up. "It's not like it's your first time being a mom." She shot me a fierce glare, but as she turned away, I caught her secretly biting her lip, smiling. Watching her panicked, blushing retreat into the nursery, I couldn't help but let out a genuine, satisfied laugh. The original script was completely shattered. The so-called Sons of Destiny were nothing but scattered ashes, and the ultimate heroine was now my soon-to-be wife. I leaned against the edge of the mahogany desk, listening to her softly coaxing our son next door, feeling an unfamiliar warmth finally settle over my once cold heart. To hell with the plot and its righteous justice. In my world, the ultimate villain secured the ultimate happy ending, and honestly, I wouldn't trade my villainous life for any protagonist's halo in the universe.